Good evening. I wish to call the Lee County Board of Commissioners to order this 17th of February, 2025. If you would be so kind to stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, as we come to you tonight, Lord, with just grateful hearts, we thank you for allowing us to be healthy enough to be here tonight to do the county's business. And with that being said, Lord, we just ask you to give us that knowledge, Lord. Give us that peace of mind. Guide us in each step that we do for the citizens of Lee County, because it is truly all about you, Lord. We love and give you glory tonight, Father God, as we do the business of this county. Give us the wisdom and the knowledge in our minds, Lord, and do the best for the citizens of Lee County. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Technically, the public hearings for the EPA, so the conservation easement, they can speak at public comments and make public comment for that. Does that make sense? That's two separate items.
Yeah, this is for the easement, okay.
So that really isn't. Sorry, that's okay.
Thank you for that legal advice. Okay, you have the agenda in front of you. Are there any additional agenda items? I do have two items. We need to pull item 2F, and that is the E-rate letter of agency, and that will be under new business. And that'll be new business item B. And then just note that we have an add-on on item 2M on the consent agenda, which is this Community Development Block Grant, Neighborhood Revitalization Grant and Project Ordinance. That would be item 2M under consent agenda. Any other changes to the agenda, and additional items on the agenda? Seeing none, can I get an approval for any additional and modifications of the agenda? Motion's been made to approve the additions to the agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. You have the consent agenda in front of you with the addition of removal one item and adding one item. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion's been made to approve the consent agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda, we have public hearings for zoning map amendment rezoning request, item 3A. And is Amy McNeil is coming forward. Thank you, Amy.
Good evening, Commissioners, Planning Board, staff, and citizens. The information regarding this item is on pages 104 through 135 of the Commissioner's agenda packet, and this is the only item for consideration in the Planning Board agenda packet. And I will pause at this time to allow the Chairman to open the public hearing and to pose the question regarding any disclosure of conflict interest.
We have a conflict of interest statement. A governing board member shall not vote on any legislative decision regarding a development regulation adopted pursuant to Chapter 160 Delta, where the outcome of the matter being considered is reasonably likely to have a direct, substantial, in readily identifiable financial impact on the member. A governing board member shall not vote on any zoning amendment if the landowner of the property is subject to a rezoning petition or application, or the applicant for a text amendment is a person with whom the member has a close familial, business, or other associational relationship. Does any board member have a conflict?
None.
Seeing none, we'll move on. I now open the public hearing on the zoning map amendment request.
Mr. William Gordon would like to rezone 2 adjoining tracts of land totaling 1.04 acres with frontage on Sunset Drive from light industrial to residential agricultural to allow the development of the site in a residential manner. Mr. Gordon and his brother inherited the property from their parents, and the intention at this time is to allow a family member to establish his home on the site, which is a short distance from Mr. Gordon's house at 3201 Hawkins Avenue and his brother's house at 3147 Sunset Drive. There was a house on the site approximately 34 years ago that is visible in the 1991 and 83 GIS aerial images. The Gordons have already purchased a new double-wide mobile home from Country Fair Homes and only discovered that the property was zoned light industrial when the mobile home company attempted to secure zoning approval for a mobile home setup permit to place the home on the site. Therefore, this rezoning request has been submitted for your consideration. This is a standard general use rezoning request as opposed to a conditional rezoning request. Therefore, no site plan or subdivision plans or building plans are required as part of this request. The existing zoning of light industrial is established to provide for areas that contain a mix of light manufacturing uses, office park, and limited retail and service uses that would service the industrial. Examples of uses permitted by right within the light industrial zoning district include landscape and garden supplies, motor vehicle repair and service, and various types of manufacturing uses. The proposed zoning of residential agricultural is established to provide areas for low-density single-family uses, low-intensity agricultural operations, as well as agribusiness and supportive industrial and commercial uses. Examples of land uses permitted by right in the residential agricultural zoning district include residential houses, parks, and churches, and there's a list of all the permitted uses allowed in both zoning districts included in your agenda packet for your reference. The adjacent zoning to the north is light industrial, to the south is light industrial, opposite Sunset Drive, to the east is highway commercial, and to the west is residential agricultural, opposite High Street. That's good. There we go. Regarding utilities, the site may be served by public water. Regarding wastewater, there is already an authorized intent to construct for a new septic system on file with the Lee County Environmental Health Department. And regarding transportation or access, the site has access off of an existing private road that was put in place many years ago. If rezoned, all of the uses permitted in the RA zoning district would be allowed, and any future redevelopment of the subject property would be required to meet the current development standards of the UDO. If the site is developed with a new home, those standards are simply compliance with the minimum building setbacks or the distance from the property line to the new home. The two lots are intended to be recombined into one, to make one lot for the home to be developed on. The Plan San Lee Land Use Plan identifies the property as Maker District, which encourages a wide range of small-scale light industrial uses. This includes manufacturing activity, uses involving previously prepared materials, products, or parts, and may include processing, fabrication, assembly, packaging, incidental storage, sales, and distribution, but not industrial processing. The local example is the Lee Avenue Ranch Street area in the Jonesboro section of town. And information regarding the land use plan is provided with your agenda packet. Regarding the staff analysis, the Plan San Lee Land Use Plan designation of Maker District is not supportive of residential zoning or residential land uses. However, it's up to the Board of Commissioners to determine how the county should grow and if they're comfortable with residential agricultural zoning and land uses at this location. Additional information presented at the public hearing should also be considered in the recommendation and the final decision regarding the requested zoning map amendment. Are there any questions?
Questions for Mrs. McNeil? Commissioner Sharp?
Thank you.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
No, sir.
Commissioner Connect?
Thank you.
Commissioner Lovick?
Ms. McNeil, did you say there was a house on this property?
Approximately 34 years ago, yes, sir, it was visible in the 1991 and 1983 aerial images. It doesn't appear there's been anything on the property since.
Okay, was it rezoned for the purpose of that in those
I
days?
could find, I'm sorry to interrupt, I could
Thank you.
find no records of the site ever being rezoned. It appears that when zoning was established in Lee County, that light industrial was assigned to the site at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Okay. The public hearing is now open, and I'm asking for anyone in support of the zoning map amendment, the rezoning, to come forward. If you do, please state your name as well as your address. Anyone speaking on behalf of the rezoning? Anyone in opposition to the rezoning? And please state your name as well as your address, sir.
Thank you. David Smoke, 96 Northridge Trail, Sanford. Purely on principle, I object to this rezoning request. I don't know the Gordon family and hold no ill will towards them, and they are welcome to correct any errors I may make on this issue. I actually hate arguing against any property owner doing whatever the heck they want on their own property, but in this one situation, I will. First of all, the Gordons own numerous lots in this area, and most of them, including the existing .45 acre lot, should support a double-wide trailer, and I don't see any compelling reason to rezone the .59 acre lot, except for the desire of the property owner to have a larger undeveloped area, which, as I said, I totally support as every property owner's right. The problem is that the zoning and use of land within the county affects all of us. When people improve and increase the value of their property, they are rewarded with higher tax bills to share a greater cost of the spending the county does supposedly on our behalf. When you think about it, we incentivize people to either hide or depress the value of their properties until all of a sudden the right buyer comes along and suddenly you receive another rezoning request to allow more developments. It's already been disclosed that Plan San Lee retains the second parcel as LI zoning. I know there is discussion to update our master plan, and this is yet another example of why property owners should take that time to submit for zoning changes so it can be integrated with the overall master plan. But I know you keep approving piecemeal exemptions. Second, I ask you to consider the financial impact. In fact, I wish the financial impact was added to all these rezoning requests. Admittedly, this is only one small lot, but since it is zoned as LI, the lot is valued much more than the neighboring parcel 1. Parcel 1 is valued at $5,600. Parcel 2 is valued at $22,200. I don't know if you're allowed, but ask Mr. Brown what a 1 acre lot with a mobile home will be valued at in the future, especially as that mobile home depreciates. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone for the rezoning request? Anyone opposed to the rezoning request? Going once, going twice. Public hearing is now closed. I will excuse the planning board and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your service. If you wish to consider sitting in on it, they're in, which room, Amy? Amy, which room? 103 across the hall. Thank you. We now have the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the Lee County Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Ordinance, and Dr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. Appreciate y'all allowing me to be here with you tonight. I think I have a couple slides up there that we can, if if we can put up, I'll just go through them briefly. Perfect. Thank you. So I've got a couple farmland preservation items to discuss tonight, but the first item I'll talk about is the revision of our agricultural development and farmland preservation ordinance. There you go. So our farmland development and preservation ordinance revisions, if I had to summarize them, basically there's three main changes that we found, and these changes have been recommended and approved by our Agricultural Advisory Board. The first change that we're looking at is eliminating the board-required membership by district. The second change is the addition of the Enhanced Voluntary Agricultural District Program. And then the third change would be a reduction of the minimum acreage required for membership in the program. Just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, and you may have seen, or hopefully you've seen these signs around the county, this is a sign that voluntary ag district participants in Lee County will have on their property. And in essence, what it does is alerts the public or alerts folks that are coming through that area that there is agriculture going on in the area. Being in the voluntary ag district provides certain nuisance protection for the landowner. There's also certain eminent domain protection that has come into play, not that I'm aware of in Lee County, but in some other places across the state. But I'd say overall, it also is an extremely positive way to promote agriculture and the vibrancy and the viability of the agricultural industry in Lee County. So to go into a little bit more detail about each one of these changes that I mentioned on the previous slide, the first recommended change is the elimination of the board-required membership by district. And this is something that was a little antiquated that we found. The previous ordinance laid out where you had to have membership. I think it was primarily from townships. I think we referred to them as districts in the ordinance. But what we found is it restricted, it kind of limited the potential pool of volunteers, of folks that could serve on the board. So the board was supportive of waiving that restriction so we could open up the general pool of applicants. The next change that we're recommending or that we would like to add to this ordinance is the addition of the Enhanced Voluntary Agricultural District. Now, please do keep in mind that we are not removing the voluntary agricultural district. We're leaving the voluntary agricultural district program in place, but we're also adding the Enhanced Voluntary Agricultural District program. I guess the easiest way to think of it is if you're thinking about conservation on a pyramid, VAD is kind of that lowest level, that entry point of conservation. Next above that is your Enhanced Voluntary Agricultural District, and Lee County does not currently have that program in place. The Enhanced Voluntary Agricultural District provides an additional layer of conservation, but there's also an additional layer of commitment for the landowner. This Enhanced Voluntary Agricultural District comes with a 10-year irrevocable agreement, so it is going to be much harder to get out of in the short term. But the benefits to the landowner are increased as well by their participation in the EVAD or the Enhanced Voluntary Ag District. Some of those incentives include they are able to receive 25% of gross sales from the sale of non-farm products from their operation, and they can still qualify as a bona fide farm. They're also eligible to receive a higher percentage of ag cost share program dollars. And when certain grants come out through the state or other departments and entities, they are typically given higher priority for those grants. And then the final item, the final request for this change is reducing the minimum acreage requirement from 5 acres of horticulture, which is in our current ordinance, to 1 acre of land in production for horticulture or agricultural uses as defined for bona fide farm purposes in the state statute. The reason behind this recommended change is we are finding more and more consistently over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a huge influx in small farms in Lee County, and we think that's a great thing. We want to encourage those that have land that want to get into agriculture to pursue that as a business or as an entrepreneurial opportunity. What we found is having that 5-acre minimum can be very restrictive, certainly for some of our smaller farmers, especially for those folks that have demonstrated they can be profitable on small acreage. I think the old 5, 10, and 20, which used to be the horticulture, agricultural field crops, and then 20 acres for forestry, was kind of that traditional way of approaching agriculture. Now what we're finding is smaller farms producing high-value products are in fact bona fide farms and can demonstrate that through their revenue. So by lowering that threshold from 5 acres to 1 acre, we anticipate we'll see a lot more folks involved in this program, which is a good thing for the county, which is a good thing for protecting farms, protecting farmland, and also promoting the viability of agriculture. Now, I do want to note that this is not tied into, this in no way would change present use value guidelines. That's a program that runs through the tax office. So present use value would maintain its 5, 10, and 20 acre minimum requirements for horticulture, ag, and forestry with the forestry management plan. This would simply allow those folks that may have a bona fide farm with less than 5 acres to get into the voluntary ag district program or the enhanced voluntary agricultural district program. I think that's all I have for this initial recommendation or this initial informational session. Any questions from the board?
Questions for Dr. Stone? Commissioner Martin?
Thank you for the time and for filling in some of the questions, that aren't necessarily on the slides, like the PUV and on. Yes, question. I had it. It was right on the tip of my tongue, and then I talked too much that I forgot the question. I'll jump back in if I need to. Sorry.
Commissioner Lovick?
No questions, but I think this does help out. We're talking about saving our farmland and things like that, and, jumping out at 5 acres, maybe we can save it 1 acre at a time. So thank you.
Commissioner Connect?
Is there a basic amount that they have to produce in terms of cost on these?
Yeah, that's a great question. According to the bona fide farm statute or the bona fide farm qualification, which somebody that would come in with less than 5 acres would be required to meet, would be a $10,000 minimum gross income. And that would be, there's a form that they would submit through the North Carolina Department of Revenue, and we anticipate that that's the kind of verification that we would use to certify farms that may come in less than 5 acres that would like to be in the program.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
Yes, thank you for that. I love what the 10-year and some of the things that you've done. I mean, just for an example, on a 1 acre property, you can plant 1,000 Christmas trees.
Yeah.
So I think when you're with certain crops, you're dealing with some of the stuff that could be years to make. So with that, we're not talking someone can buy an acre of property and then tomorrow say it's a farm, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The income threshold for the bona fide farm, I believe, when you have to go through the process that Dr. Connect was asking about, is an average of 3 years.
Yeah.
So you do have to demonstrate that income over 3 years.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure the general public kind of knew that, people have to put some stake and some actual grunt work and sweat into before you're actually considered a farm.
Yeah, and I do appreciate you mentioning that because we do want to ensure, I think, the integrity or the legitimacy of farms or operations that we're recognizing or allowing to come into the voluntary ag district. But we also do want to make sure that those with smaller acreage, if they are legitimate and bona fide, are not restricted from getting in the program.
Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yeah, are you aware of any other programs, within the state or that serve the same purpose as this program, or is this pretty much
I think this program is probably the most broadly utilized program across the state. I think it's fairly popular. I mean, it is, many elements of it are through state statute, so there is a lot of consistency across how it's implemented. But the counties, as we're talking about here with some of these modifications, the counties do have some discretion on how they recognize folks in the program. But I think overall, this program is fairly unique, and it does provide, as I mentioned before, kind of that pyramid of conservation. It does provide a level for a landowner to dip their toe in the water, I guess, of conservation, and then determine, based on their experience, if they would like to take additional steps, like if they would like to maybe move into the EVAD, or even conservation easements, which we'll be talking about a little later, which is kind of that highest level of conservation that comes with a perpetual commitment. So it's a major commitment. But I think the reason this is popular is it's voluntary. So landowners can come in and come out at the VAD level, and it still does provide some protections for them, and it also provides some agricultural awareness for the community.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, and I support the program. That's why I asked the question. Was there any other competing programs?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I think this is pretty unique, and this is kind of the standard that's used across the state for conservation.
And obviously, our goal is to preserve farmland
Yeah,
and prevent developments from taking over.
well, yeah, I mean, I think, yes. Certainly, from my perspective, I think that's extremely critical to preserve farmland, and that's what we're going to talk about in greater detail when we talk about conservation easements. I would say, though, that, again, we keep going back to that terminology of voluntary. So if somebody did decide to sell, if they were made an offer by a developer, they still have the right, obviously, to choose to take that offer. But as an entryway into conservation, I think this is a great first step. This is, I guess I would summarize it as saying this is one tool in our tool belt at the county's disposal for conservation. And I think, as we'll see, and as I get into greater detail about conservation easements, we'll see how a lot of these programs fit together. One program is not going to be a magic bullet or a magic pill to preserve all the farmland. We recognize that, but I think it's different levels of investment by the landowner, different levels of investment by the county, by citizens, by stakeholders. As we put these programs together, along with a robust land use plan, we can really begin to, I think, achieve our land use goals as a county.
But this new district, there's no cost for that, right?
The enhanced voluntary ag district. No, there's really no cost to the county on this. All the cost that comes in, or that comes into membership to this program, is on the landowner, and it's minimal. They purchase a sign, and then I think there's fees for the Register of Deeds. So typically right now it's about $85 when somebody goes into the program. And we've applied for some grants to even subsidize that cost. We're hoping these grants will come through, and then we can even promote the program further by doing some cost share for folks that want to get into these programs.
I have a follow-up on that, actually. I remember my two questions. Firstly, the EVAD compared to the VAD has the offers preference, or maybe preferential consideration, let's say, for grants. Am I correct in understanding then that if you're in the VAD program, you would not necessarily receive that as a farmer. But if you're an EVAD, you would. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think it hurts you to be in the VAD, but some of these more competitive grants, I think any additional layer that you can demonstrate of commitment to conservation just will
Makes
help your
sense.
application.
Yeah. And then just trying to flesh out a little bit, any responsibility on the county for this 10-year agreement. So farmer buys into the program, 6 years down the road, for whatever reason decides he or she really needs to be out of the agreement. How does that tie in legally? Are we talking about titles? Are we talking, can you flesh that out a little bit for us?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I know we talked a little bit
Yeah.
last Friday, and we
Yeah.
kind of covered that. And in the meantime, I did hear back from our North Carolina State agricultural attorney, Andrew Brandon, and it was interesting because he's not really experienced many of those instances, but his recommendation is that this Enhanced Voluntary Ag District program would be on a county title. So if a landowner did try to get out of the EVAD by selling the property or by developing it or doing something that was not in that covenant, it would be incumbent upon the county to enforce it, at their, I guess, at whatever level they would choose to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, after the meeting started, the attorney confided with me regarding the public comment sheet. Now, before I open the public hearing on this, please understand, you can speak on both. You can speak on a public comment, and you can speak on the Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Ordinance revisions. This has nothing to do with the easement policy that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. So just to clarify, I'm going to open the public hearing for Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Ordinance revisions. Any of the revisions of the ordinance that's on the screen there, we'll leave that up there. If you signed up for public comments for the proposed conservation easement, you'll have 3 minutes to speak when I get to public comments on that. So hopefully everybody understands. You can speak on both, and we will move forward, and I will open the public hearing on the Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Ordinance revisions. Public hearing is now open. If you wish to speak on behalf or against the Farmland Preservation Ordinance revisions, please give us your name, your address, and then tell us if you're for or against, sir.
Jim Womack from 1615 Boone Trail Road in Sanford. The essence of my comments are in favor, but with a caution. So I'll just begin by saying I, like most of the citizens in Lee County, I think, are all for farmland preservation, with emphasis on the word preservation. There's a present use value program guide dated August 2023 that discusses taxable valuations of property and what's exempt from taxation, et cetera. And I would like to make clear that while I support the ordinance revisions under this particular topic, I want to throw the caution out that we shouldn't be monkeying around with the present use value ordinances or the present use value implementation in Lee County in connection with these changes. And I hope that that's going to be discussed later on in the other hearing. Hobby farms are a thing of the present, and they're growing in popularity everywhere around the state, and they should be encouraged everywhere, but not at the expense of the taxpayers. In other words, hobby farms should be encouraged, should be promoted, even grant programs should be encouraged. However, hobby farms or properties that don't fall under present use value requirements for either 5 acres for horticulture or 10 acres for agriculture, those hobby farms should be left with full taxation as they exist. People don't know this, but today in Lee County, over $1 billion in property value are exempt from taxation. $1 billion. And that's a substantial reduction in the potential tax value, which increases the tax burden on all other citizens who have taxable property. And so we don't need to contribute to exempting more and more property from taxation in the county. That's really important. However, we should encourage hobby farms or small agricultural tracts through either the VAD or the EVAD programs. We think that that's really important. I just want to throw caution out that that we really don't want to connect conservation in the purest sense with the preservation of farmland. This is really important that we preserve, but not necessarily exempt from taxation by putting them into conservation easements and that sort of thing. So I reserve the right to speak on other things. There is another provision, by the way, that people may not be aware of under wildlife conservation that you can avoid taxation. If you've got property that you want to exempt from taxation, the state has now cordially made it updated as of 2022, where you can preserve certain or conserve certain property under wildlife, if that's what your interest is in avoiding taxation. But if you want to have farms, then unless you get the 5 or 10 acre requirement, you should still pay taxes on those farms. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in support or opposed to the Agricultural Development Farmland Preservation Ordinance revisions? Please state your name and your address.
My name's Aaron Ayers. This is my wife Hunter. We're at 3652 County Line Road, Cameron. So we're members of the VAD program, proudly glad to be a part of it. Our first question was, where's the EVAD? When we applied to put our acreage in the VAD program, because other counties have it, we would sign up today. You know, we're in full support of that. It does help us with grant funding. We farm at on basically all the land that we own, and we produce products. We do appreciate the 1 acre, because there is a lot of folks, and you can speak to this a little bit, at the smaller levels that work hard and are able to produce at least a part-time living on smaller acreage tracts, and good on them for doing it. We support that fully. And then just one other thing that we wanted to kind of touch on is the projection of the county. So it's really kind of beneficial for the county to see these EVAD and VAD programs, to kind of see the interest in agriculture. You know, we drive around and we see the fields and we see the trees and we see everything that's going on, but being able to see the signs and being able to know that there's that much interest in agriculture is really important. So we're in full support of all the revisions. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, as a Sanford Farmers Market member, we, like Aaron said, we're part of the VAD program, and, you know, we qualify for over the 10 acre exempt status. So, but as a member of the farmers market, there's a lot of folks there who have much smaller acreage than we do, and honestly, they're way more profitable than we are most of the time. So I understand the, you know, interest in not washing down that status, and I think that's important. But as a young person especially, like Aaron said, since we've done it, whether we had 7 acres to our name or 100 acres to our name, you know, we farm. So it's important for me as a young person, you know, you don't always get those big 10 acre tracts or 20 acre tracts or 100 acre tracts to start out with. Sometimes you're limited with what you can start out with. So any help that you can have for a young person who's only 20, 21, 22, starting out is going to be huge in terms of them being able to still pursue production in agriculture and pursuing farm status and agriculture heritage in Lee County. So that's all I would say.
Thank you. Anyone else in support or opposing the Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Ordinance revisions?
David Spoke, 96 Northridge Trail, Sanford. I have to add in my comments a little bit on the fly based on some of the information that the ag representative thankfully posted about the cost to the taxpayer. Good evening, as always, commissioners. I am generally speaking against this EVAD motion for a couple of reasons. But first, I would point out a technical error in the draft document posted for review. Under Article 10A, requirement to participate, it states, in order for farmland to qualify for a VAD and EVAD, it must be real property that meets all the following requirements in Article 6A above. But Article 6A states, The purpose of establishing a voluntary agricultural district is to increase identity and pride in the agricultural community and way of life, decrease the likelihood of legal disputes, and encourage an interest in the protection of farmland. I'm not sure, but it should probably refer to Article 6C. But if you read that article, it also says that Article 8 requirements must be met. Bottom line is Article 10A is wrong from what I read and poorly written, at least to me. It sounds like almost something the Vogons would write in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Just a little joke. First of all, I think this should be considered only after the county master plan has been updated. I really want that master plan to take a look at the overall needs and growth of this county. Pay attention to Articles 13, 14, and 15 of this document. Remember that dropping the land requirements to 1 acre can make pockets of these conservation districts pop up all over the county, which may interfere with other major projects like I-685 or even the next county jail. I don't know, it might. I do question the financial impact of this ordinance. I know it was said it would not have any impact. I would repeat this every year or so, but if you would pass an ordinance exempting combat veterans with disabilities from paying the county taxes, you will never hear from me again. I can make every argument to support a tax exemption program for us combat vets that would match or exceed this proposed ordinance, which I know it doesn't specifically address that, but it is on the slide. If that was considered, I'm sure you would consider two things: the impact to the county tax base that others will have to pay from the loss of revenue from people like me and the chairman, and how you would actually attract more and more disabled combat vets to move here, which would be great on one hand, but also force the rest of the county residents to bear the financial burden. If you say this program won't have a financial impact, great. Give us the baseline right now, how many acres, valued at how much, are under the current program, and the next time this program is under review, we can measure the impact. I think this ordinance overall is a solution looking for a problem. I've warned in the past about creating special populations in this county, and with the best of intentions, that is what we keep doing. U.S. government should not be picking the winners and losers, but we all know that's what happens at all levels of government, including this one. I believe you may be on a slippery slope and encourage you to at least defer this ordinance until after we get the master plan updated. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Would you forward those changes that you, or those conflicts that you noted to the clerk after the meeting?
Yes, I will.
I appreciate that, sir. Anyone else in support of the revisions of the Lee County Agricultural Development and Farmland Ordinance? Anyone for? Anyone opposed? Going once, going twice. I've closed the public hearing on the revisions of the Lee County Agricultural Development and Farmland Ordinance. Thank you. Moving on. Before we get to public comments, I would like to recognize Emmanuel Whitehead with Lee County Young Commissioners. If you please come forward, Emmanuel, please. Please introduce yourself. Oh, you don't need.
Should I turn around and face him?
Oh, no, just speak in there. You're on camera.
Oh! Hi, I'm Emmanuel Whitehead. I'm 16 years old and I'm a junior at Lee County High School. I'm here representing the Youth Council. I'm the president of that organization. And I just would like to be a voice for the youth and be someone who can make an impact. And yeah, it's nice to be here.
Thank you, and we appreciate you being here. And make sure you take copious notes.
Okay.
I shared with everybody our meeting on Saturday.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We do have public comments up next, and just a reminder, you are required to give your name and address as well, and you will have 3 minutes. Marshall will put the timer up on the screen. The first individual is, I think it's Joni. Is that correct? I'm trying to read the writing, if that's a J or an F, I can't tell.
It's a J. You were
Okay.
correct.
Joni and D. Garcia.
DeCiancia.
DeCiancia, thank you.
Yes. And I'm not sure I can be heard, but I'll give my best. Thank you for having us. I'm here to speak to you about schools and about the proposed budget for schools. And I hadn't really planned anything, so I'm just going to tell you why it's so important that we fund schools to their fullest. The way you teach kids is by connections. I know that seems silly and obvious, but it's critical. And when you have large classrooms or substitutes, or you don't have the right staff or enough of the staff, no matter how wonderful of a teacher you are, you can't teach children. You have to have the funds for all of that support, because we don't just educate them, we don't just give them knowledge, we grow them. We really do grow them. The things they talk to us about, we hear about their families, about where they want to go to school, about their jobs, about their significant others. They share with us so many things. And I don't want to stop being that human who helps grow those kids. I do educate them. I educate them well, but that's one part. I'm helping to grow these children into the human beings that we all become. But I can't do that unless there are people around me and with me and for me. And the school budget will help to do that. So I guess I'm asking you to really think about that when you look at what money you assign. And I know it's a very difficult choice. I do understand that, and I thank you for that. But sometimes I think as schools, we just see paper and copiers and pencils and notebooks and curriculum, and it's so much more than that. And so I just came to speak on that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next for public comments, Kathy Howard. And please state your name and your address.
Okay. I'm Kathy Howard, 483 Wildlife Road. I'm here with my brother and sister-in-law, Paul and Johnny-Ann Howard, and Melissa Clunan from the Triangle Land Conservancy. We're here today to support the proposed conservation easement proposal and the funding source that would be discussed with that. I'm here to say that in 1957, my father came to Sanford to start the Sanford Medical Group, which is now the Pinehurst Medical Center. He loved this community, he cared deeply for hundreds of patients, and he was a compassionate and avid cheerleader for the economic development of Lee County. He thought this community was the Mecca of North Carolina. After practicing medicine for over 40 years, he developed two new passions, the Lee County Boys and Girls Club and a 200-acre parcel of land that's out US 1 across from Quail Ridge Golf Course. This land had been neglected for years. He put his personal resources and his sweat equity into establishing a longleaf pine tree farm. His efforts paid off. He was earned the North Carolina Outstanding Tree Farmer of the Year, and the farm is listed in the North Carolina Longleaf Honor Roll. He also saw the benefits of this tree farm for the youth of this community, particularly youth for Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. And he often, and we continue to this day, invite them to the property to experience the forest, to see tadpoles, to know what it is like to be truly in nature, which many of these young people have not really experienced before. The property is also home to many native species of plants. A local nursery comes and collects seeds annually, and in return, makes a donation to the Boys and Girls Club. My dad's enthusiasm lured me and Paul to continue to help him by investing, and now after his passing, to continue to enhance and maintain the property. But development is closing in on us. Residential, industrial, recreational, around this 200-acre parcel. And Paul and I are not getting any younger, so we sought out the Triangle Land Conservancy over a year ago to explore ways that we can preserve the farm and its many benefits to the community. With their assistance, we have applied to the state to become a conservation easement. With your help, our grant will have a competitive advantage with what you're considering this evening. If we succeed, and it's the global we here, with your help, Lee County will have an oasis preserved for future generations to appreciate and enjoy. We invite you to come visit Wildlife Lake Tree Farm. We would love to give you a tour. You'll have a chance to see the site of the original Lee County Wildlife Club many years ago. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to express our support for this policy and its source of funding. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next on public comments, Emily York. And again, Emily, please state your name and address.
Yes, I'm Emily York. I live at 315 North Steel Street in Sanford. So earlier there was a school board budget meeting to approve the budget. And I am delighted to say that this budget includes the full pay raise for classified staff and updated supplement structure for certified staff. And this budget would only be 24.6% of the county budget. And last year, if I am correct on my numbers, this board voted to give the school board 25.1% of the budget. So I'm here just to ask that you approve the budget. It's very important. I realize it's not really up for discussion, and I don't have numbers or anything further to show you. But we just wanted to go ahead and get on that and let you know that this is definitely seems like progress. And I'm very encouraged. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual is April Stone. And as before, please state your name and your address. Okay, go ahead.
April Stone, 727 Forestwood Park Road. Good evening, Commissioners. I come to you once again on behalf of the classified staff of Lee County Schools. We began advocating for ourselves to make a living wage over a year ago. As of today, we've only achieved baby steps, and we need your help to continue. We have been back and forth between the Board of Education and Commissioners pleading our case, and for lack of a better word, begging for a solution to what is a well-deserved pay increase. First, I want to clarify some of the myths and misconceptions that seem to be getting in the way of the actual matter at hand here, our pay. It's not a matter of when the pay was frozen or why we've not had increases at a local level or why two boards have not been able to work together for some time. I've included in these packets, I just passed it out, copies of all of the sources that have the facts that I'm about to share with you. I followed the articles and that have been printed with questioning the facts of classified pay and whether or not we've received increases. First, the first myth is that we have not received a pay increase in over 15 years. Our pay was frozen at the local level in 2008. We've stated this again and again. It's a local level, no increase for 15 years. The only increases we have received have been from the state, which is when they gave us an increase to $15 an hour, effective July 1st, 2022. The difference in certified versus classified employees. I've included a list of classified employee lists, and they have pay grades. They are not longevity or pay scales. They are as a grade. We have not had a pay scale implemented in Lee County since 2008 as well. Certified employees are required to hold licenses, classified are not. For example, they are included in your packets as well, instructional assistants, bus driver. Included in the packet from NCDPI is an employee salary manual. Certified employees receive the step, or previously, as it says in there, referred to as longevity. In reference to the comparison of other jobs that make around the same amount we do, it is going to be compared to that as the educational requirements for an instructional assistant having to have an associate's degree versus someone, for example, that may work in fast food who has to have no qualifications of an associate degree. As far as our insurance and supplemental benefits, we are offered those, but they are at a rate that we have to pay, and each year it has gone up and up due to inflation and cost of living, but our paycheck in all these years has not. Last, I would like to, in the packet I would like to share with you is the proposed full hourly rate that I am supposed to get.
Is that? It's a timer. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
well, it's in there.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list for public comments, Cecil Cameron. And please state your name as well as your address, sir.
Cecil Cameron,
Oh, no, when you get up to the microphone.
You can't hear me, Kurt? Okay. We'll start over. Cecil Cameron, 3459 Avance Ferry Road, which is right down the road from Chairman Smith's mailbox. So we are neighbors. I come tonight to speak to you in support of our proposed conservation easement policy, which is item on your agenda. As we've heard how important agriculture is to Lee County. Also how important it is to preserve this farmland. I am a farm owner. I'm a retired banker by profession, but I'm a farm owner, timberland owner, and we need to preserve this land. We need some incentives because it is very, very difficult. And I thank you for the rollback provision within our taxes for it. Without it, many of us could not keep our farms. But you need to support this program. We need it very badly, so please support it. I think I'm in support of several of the members of our board here tonight. There are 5 or 6 members of our Ag Advisory Board. I serve on it as vice chair, and I thank you for letting me serve, because it is fun. It is knowledgeable, and I think it's important. But please, when this comes up, please support it with the support of passage, and if funding is needed, please support it for funding. Again, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. It's been a very nice pleasure being here for the meeting. It's been informative. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And for full disclosure, District 2 has been represented by Tim Sloan, who lives around the corner, and my property is a butt to Amy Dalrymple's family, who was a board member, and Charlie Parks is down the road on Buckhorn. So there's something in the water out in the Cape Fear District, just to let you know, that instills individuals to run for office. Thank you. Next individual is Don Nicholson. And again, sir, please state your name and your address.
Don Nicholson, 11 Nicholson Road, Sanford. I'll be the redneck portion of the meeting tonight, as I usually am. I'm here for the proposed conservation easement policy. I grew up on the farm, still live on the farm. Not fortunate enough to be farming nowadays, but still, my wife and I both are children of farmers, and we fully support this board supporting this policy change. Agriculture is the heritage of Lee County. It's also what brings a lot of folks here. It makes this county a very livable county, and I really think that we need to do what we can do in order to preserve as much farmland as we can and preserve the heritage of this county. With that, leave you be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last on the list is Mr. Jim Womack. You're fine? Thank you, sir. All right, next item on the agenda is under new business is the proposed conservation easement policy and establishment and funding of an agricultural development and farmland preservation program. This is for presentation only tonight. So if you have any questions, Dr. Stone?
Yes,
Dr.
thank
Stone,
you. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question
Yes, sir.
from the previous discussion before I get into the new one? If a person has an acre farm, and this is how they're starting out, right? Does somebody add a farm if it's not adjacent to them? Like, hey, I bought this other acre over here, now I have 2 acres that I'm farming? Does that end up adding, or do you have to be adjacent acres?
Yeah, you have to qualify. My understanding is you have to qualify for the minimum acreage. I believe there are
Like
some
all together as one?
contiguous. Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's what it lists in the policy, contiguous. Yeah, and I also did want to clarify too, and I mentioned in my earlier remarks, but the request or the revisions in that ordinance does not affect in any way PUV eligibility. You know, PUV is through the tax office. PUV will, remain 5, 10, and 20. Any requests that we're making for changes in ordinance are strictly related to voluntary ag district, enhanced voluntary ag district membership. So those that are under that 5-acre threshold would still not qualify for PUV, so that wouldn't affect any
Explain
tax
that so
base.
people understand the PUV.
Yep. Okay.
Can you explain that part?
What-
PUV part?
It's gonna be.
Yeah,
I gotta do that now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I will. Thank you. Thank you for that question. So this is kind of the next portion of our, as I mentioned, our farmland preservation toolkit and proposal for conservation easement policy. So this actually dates back a little while back when the board voted to go forward and to explore farmland preservation efforts a little bit more. So I did want to recognize a number of our members for our Agriculture Advisory Board Committee that spoke tonight. They've done an amazing job. They've been great advocates for agriculture. We've had some really solid and helpful conversations in those meetings, as well as putting together a committee of stakeholders as well that specifically looked at these ordinances and also these conservation easement policies, including, folks from economic development, from the tax office, from planning and zoning. So we had a lot of expertise coming together with, putting heads together with the shared intention of thinking about the future of agriculture and land use in Lee County. So thank you to those folks that were a part of that and that are in attendance tonight. So a little refresher on conservation easement, because we have talked about this some before. Conservation easement is a program that a landowner can go into. It's a voluntary program, and it is a way to protect that land in perpetuity. While they go into this agreement, there are certain financial and tax benefits, but it is a legal agreement between a landowner and a land trust or a government agency in some circumstances that permanently limits the future use of that land in an effort to protect the conservation value of the property. Easements can be tailored specifically to the needs of that landowner, and that's something normally that a land conservancy group or a government entity will work with that landowner to make sure that this program is right for them. So just to give an overview of some of the benefits of a Lee County conservation easement policy, I think number one, as we talk about development, as we talk about growth in our community, conservation easements are one of the best ways, I would say, one of the best viable financial alternatives for a landowner that wants to maintain that land to selling it, or instead of selling it to development. It provides them a cash amount, and we'll talk a little bit more about the easement process as we go along. But in essence, what a landowner decides to do if they want to go into this program, they will sell the development rights for their property to a conservation easement. Typically, that's going to be held by an outside organization. We have Melissa Clunan from Triangle Land Conservancy, who's been consulting with us on this project. She works regularly with landowners that are interested in going into these conservation easement agreements. And typically, when a landowner wants to go into an easement agreement, she helps to look outside for outside grant dollars, to put together easement packages and the easement purchase for the landowner. Now, I think it is important to understand that when we think about these landowners being compensated for the development value of their property, typically this is not going to be at 100%. There's normally a donation of 25 to 50% in certain cases, and maybe even more. So it's not like this landowner is going out getting paid market rate for the development rights to their property. So there is a level of sacrifice and certainly a level of long-term commitment in this agreement. The next point, why we think this is beneficial, of course, it will provide a meaningful partnership as we talk about the public-private partnership between the county, between a landowner, as well as a conservation organization. It also helps to establish a standard procedure for landowners who may be seeking financial support for a conservation easement to work through the county. What we've laid out for in this policy is what that process would look like, what these steps would look like. And I won't go into great detail on that because everybody can read that in their own time. But basically it lays out how a landowner would first approach Cooperative Extension, Soil and Water. We would then connect them with the Land Conservancy Group. Once the Land Conservancy Group did the vetting and recognized that these folks were a viable candidate for the conservation easement program, they would then meaning the landowner or the Land Conservancy Group, would then bring that request to our Ag Advisory Board, who would be the initial vetting body for this potential project. If the Ag Advisory Board approved, that request would then go up to the Board of County Commissioners. If the commissioners do decide, when y'all decide to move forward or to vote on this, if there were funds allocated through present use value, which we'll talk to in just a minute, at that point, the Land Conservancy Group would provide a cost estimate on what dollars they would be looking at from the county. Now, we do want to emphasize the fact that the dollar requests will typically be dollars that are not covered by outside grants, that are not covered by state funds, that are not covered through ADFP, which is Agricultural Development Trust Fund grants. I know Melissa and her group, they do an excellent job of bringing in outside dollars. What we envision are these county dollars to be used towards some of the soft costs that help close out this project, whether that's survey fees for the landowner, whether it's administrative fees, oftentimes fees that are not covered under grant dollars, that sometimes aren't permissible under grant dollars, but oftentimes can be the difference on whether a landowner can willingly go into this process. Sometimes, and I'll talk about this in a minute, sometimes those can be the make or break costs that are coming out of pocket, and those can be the difference in a landowner deciding they want to go forward with an easement or they're not financially able to do so. The next bullet point I wanted to talk about is how easements can help reduce development pressure on county resources and infrastructure. And I've got a slide that will look at how the financials work on that. And also, if we think about the Plan San Lee that was concluded in 2018, a lot of the feedback that we found from stakeholders in a lot of these listening and outreach sessions, folks said that land use and agriculture, farmland preservation, limiting growth and urban sprawl out into the countryside was something that's really important to them. So I wanted to talk a little bit more on that. In this next slide, is a reference to the land use plan. Looking at the top 6, and these were the top 6 concerns when folks were asked about future growth. Number 1 was increased traffic, which I think we all probably can appreciate when we go down Horner Boulevard. But then loss of farmland, loss of open space, school capacity, which I didn't embolden there, but I think you could safely say that that obviously relates to growth and development. Park capacity, and then quality of future growth. When we think about how we grow, we think about the smart growth and where growth makes sense. So I think this demonstrates that this is an important issue to the citizens in our community. When folks were asked further about areas related to the environment that were important to them, they mentioned the quality of water resources, the natural environment. Many folks that were surveyed talked about how growth and higher density growth should be focused in areas where it's suitable, where it makes the most sense. And then comments were consistent, where folks desired existing or had a desire to preserve existing open space and farmland, and they valued the small town feel and rural character of the community. And these were themes that came, up consistently over and over again when you look through that land use plan. This is a study that we worked with Mount Olive College in 2017, and this gives an example. When we talk about cost to the county, I think this provides a pretty compelling snapshot in the value of agriculture as well as commercial and industrial versus some of the residential growth that we see. For every dollar of county revenue, it's about 31 cents goes to services for agriculture, 47 cents goes to commercial and industrial, and residential growth is a net pull on that dollar of $1.32 per dollar. So if we look at the numbers in aggregate, residential land creates a residential land, and the uses and the services required create a net loss of almost $14 million, while the other two land use categories of agriculture and commercial industrial are a net positive of almost $15 million. So I think you can see again, that further brings home that point of it's so critical that we have balance, and we think about balance when we think about growth, where growth makes sense, and having that good balance of not just all residential growth in our community. So, talking a little bit more about what it would look like to establish an agriculture development and farmland preservation fund. And this is where we get into present use value. So, as we talked about before, present use value, and I know everybody's probably at different levels of their awareness and understanding of present use value, so I apologize if I go to 101 on this, but I think it is important to understand that when land is used for agriculture, the taxes paid by that landowner are at a greatly reduced rate. Present use value is probably the best farmland preservation tool that we have in our state. We're very fortunate in North Carolina that we have present use value. It is basically the only way that farmers are allowed to, or that farmers are able to farm because of the cost of land. So what happens when we talk about land being sold for development or land coming out of present use value? When agricultural land is sold, that land, if it's sold for another use, a development use, or any use outside of agriculture, immediately upon the sale, it's come due. The taxes are come due for 3 prior years, plus the current year, plus interest, okay? And that is the tax deferred value. So all the taxes that the farmer was saving on that land while he was farming because of the present use value, because of agricultural use, now comes due at the full market value of that property. So it's kind of hard to see on this slide, but you see an example of some land where the market value may be $800,000, the present use value was $125,000 a year. The property tax on the full market value would have been $5,700, whereas agricultural use was only $813. Fast forward to that land being sold, all those taxes were collected. Basically, you're looking at about $18,000 of present use value or of deferred taxes coming due upon that sale. Is that any questions on present use value?
Questions on present use value? Commissioner Sharp?
No, I don't have any.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
So when it comes to the easement, when it's placed in the TLC, and I may be jumping ahead, so go ahead and tell me if I am, you're saying what's been deferred the 3 years is what's going to be due when they go into the TLC? Okay.
No.
That's why I said I think I might be
No,
getting, okay.
no, that's fine, that's fine. It's, the concept, I mean, I should, Michael Brown's back there probably, he might want to add something too. But, so basically, when land is sold, when land is in agricultural use, it's going to be taxed at a very reduced rate. Typically, what we see is it's going to be taxed at about 10%, give or take a couple percentage points, on what the retail market value of that land is. When that land is sold, let's say 100 acres of farmland is sold to a developer, when that land is sold, all of those deferred taxes that the farmer was not paying because it was being used for ag use, and which is one of the only ways that he could afford to farm, those dollars for 3 years, plus the current year, plus interest on those dollars, then comes due. And I believe that's due by the seller. Now, sometimes they'll negotiate how that works. If the developer buys it, sometimes they'll cover it because they find it worth their while to do so. But yes, that money comes due, and these present use value dollars vary. They ebb and flow from year to year, and I'm going to show you a graph in just a second where you see as our development kind of tracks, you can see that graph line go up post-COVID. And actually, I believe that's our next slide.
Dr. Stone?
Yes.
Just to follow up on Taylor's question, and just to get clarity as we move forward, for clarity, when you say the taxes come due, what you're saying is the taxes are due, in this case, back to Lee County. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Upon the close of the sale, upon the transaction, those deferred taxes will come due.
Okay.
Dr. Stone, I think, to clarify Commissioner Vorbeck's question, I think she's asking if they go into this easement, does that prompt the present use value taxes having to be paid back?
If they go into a conservation easement,
Yes.
those would actually be separate. I think they could potentially be related, but typically when somebody's going into a conservation easement, that land will be in present use value currently, in most situations. I will add once, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what a conservation easement is, but it is important to note, once land goes into a conservation easement in perpetuity, then that land does maintain or will remain in present use value perpetually.
Continue with questions. Any further questions, Commissioner Vorbeck?
No, sir.
Commissioner Connect? No? No question?
Oh, one question. So if I sell my 100 acres to another farmer, then I don't do the rollback?
Yeah, that's correct. I think there are certain stipulations about there being, and again, the tax man might be able to help me some on this. I think there are stipulations on who that land is sold to and if it's a relative and if there's any gap. But my understanding is if it's the same land use and it maintains in that same land use, I believe the land can remain in present use value. Michael, do you want to? Hopefully I didn't totally butcher that one. I'm going to go to the expert on this.
Yeah, step aside, man.
Come clean up my mess.
I was wondering whether I was going to get called up for this tonight. If a property, are you speaking of a transfer like between you and me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I own a piece of farmland, it's 100 acres, and you want to buy that 100 acres and I sell that land to you, okay? You can, under continued use, buy my property, accept my deferred tax liability, which is the current year and 3 prior years plus interest. You can accept my deferred tax liability, and through a new application filed within 60 days, and the continued use part of the statute would actually says that you're going to do the same things that I was doing with the farm. You know, I was an individual and you're an individual. There's certain ownership requirements that kind of come into play sometimes that can be tricky when it comes to present use value. You can continue, by continued use, take my land and the deferred taxes would not trigger.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lovick?
So you said farmers are getting a tax deduction or compensate the land value, or is a different rate? But they can do that under, is that state statute? They get that without even coming into this program, is that correct?
Yes, this is outside of the
Right.
conservation. Yeah, this is under
Yeah.
present use value.
Well, I know it was stated kind of before that, you know, they were getting tax breaks. They're getting that without even us voting on anything.
That's
on this.
that's correct.
Yes,
That's correct.
what we're trying to do is preserve our land so it doesn't become
Yeah,
something other than.
conservation easement, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like and what that entails for the landowner. But that really is the ultimate commitment to conservation. It is a perpetual commitment by the landowner where they basically sell the development rights, sell the development rights to, in many cases, a entity, a land conservation group that will hold that easement, and then that land in perpetuity can never be developed. Now, it can be sold, it can be passed down to heirs, but according to whatever the parameters of that contract lay out, they have to abide by that. So whoever buys that property has to understand that when they purchase it, if it's, you know, somebody outside the family or whoever purchases it, they have to understand that the development rights are not sold with that property.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is people aren't going to try to come into the preservation program just to get a tax break. They can already get that.
That's correct. Yep,
Thank you.
that's correct.
Are you saying that it goes back to the original present use value once it goes into the easement? So
What-
if it was valued at $1 million, it stays at $1 million taxably?
No, I think what I referenced before is the majority of situations, if somebody's going into a conservation easement, they are typically already going to be.
Doing the farm portion.
Yes, exactly. The farm portion would have been in present use
How
value.
did they stop farming that land?
Well, I think when they developed the contract with the Land Conservancy Group, there is a certain understanding about what uses that land or what are acceptable agricultural uses. So every project and property will look a little different. So it's not necessarily going to be like this farm has to grow row crops or something like that. There are a number of agricultural uses that qualify under these conservation easement agreements. And I think that's what's so unique and interesting is every project looks a little different. As you heard the Howards talk about their project, they're looking at a longleaf pine restoration. The Ayers project, who spoke earlier, they are actually reinvesting some of the money that will come to them through the sale of that easement into their farming operations. So they can actually use that cash infusion to farm and to grow their business in the future, even looking at acquiring more land. So it looks a little different from each situation, but the parameters and I guess the expectations of what that land can be used, that's all taken care of during the
What
contract
happens if they
phase.
stop using it that way?
If they stop using it, well, when the easements are sold, and let's say the Triangle Land Conservancy is the group that holds this easement, they do annual monitoring on that easement to ensure that that landowner is abiding by whatever the agreement. And there are certain legal there are certain legal processes that they can take if that landowner is not fulfilling the contract. Now, I do want to note it's important that when we're talking about the county supporting some of these costs of finalizing a conservation easement project with the landowner, when that conservation easement agreement is signed and goes through, let's say, Triangle Land Conservancy or any conservation group that we're working with, the county does not hold that easement. So the county is not the one that does all the monitoring. They do all the legwork, they do the paperwork. In essence, it's almost like hiring a private outside contractor to execute the job. The county's only role in this would be to vet the projects, make sure that it, aligns with the goals of this county board. It aligns with, conservation goals, the land use plan, and then release the funds. But after that, the county is not the easement holder. The county would not take on any of that liability, responsibility, or be responsible for any of the auditing or reporting.
Just so we're not getting ahead of ourselves, any other questions on present use value? Commissioner Lovick?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Martin, present use value question?
Not on present use value, although something that Dr. Stone just said did trigger a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, we were getting.
I hear you. I hear you. Shall I wait?
Go ahead.
All right. Dr. Stone, you just mentioned what might be the county's responsibility in this agreement of the easements. I guess when you said that it would come before the board to determine how it fits into our plan. I mean, I think I echo what we all have expressed here, which is, we value our farms and our farmers and the importance, the historical and the future importance of that, right? But it would be the farmer's prerogative if he wants to put, or she wants to put her land in a conservation easement. That's their prerogative, right? So their land already aligns with the zoning requirements, and it already aligns with that is already established, right? So coming before the board wouldn't necessarily, am I correct in understanding that to bring this particular project before the board, it would not necessarily have anything to do with, does the board agree that that we want this project to be in a conservation easement? That's not really our prerogative to determine, but rather, does the board want to fund the project? Is that where you were going with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I just wanted to make clear that when these projects go through the vetting process, they'll first go before the Agricultural Advisory Board, and they'll hear from Triangle Land Conservancy about the project. And if that board, feels comfortable with the project, kind of agrees with it, agrees with the funding request, it would then go to the Board of Commissioners for ultimate approval. So the board, the board would have the discretion on releasing those funds. And the conversation that we've had so far talking through this is when that request goes to the board, the request would include how those funds would be used for that project. As we mentioned, some of the soft costs typically that aren't covered through grants and other outside funding sources. But also the amount, we would estimate, the request, upon completion of the project will not exceed this amount. So the board would feel comfortable in, the amount that they would potentially agree to. I think the point that I was just trying to get at is the board will still have as much input or as much discretion on every project that would come to them and be able to make decisions on each one individually.
I think, Kirk, you were warning me, rightly so, that I might have jumped ahead with that question because you haven't really presented the financial component yet, right? And so we're still waiting for that. I just wanted to clarify that the farmer does in fact have sole decision on whether or not they want to place their land in a conservancy. It has,
of course,
the board has no vote whatsoever. Or
yes,
yes, right.
And really I guess the only so let's say a landowner, if they were to choose to place their land in a conservation easement, they would be under no obligation to go through the county board if they chose to go directly through Triangle Land Conservancy or any other group. I think, the reason why we're presenting this policy to the board is, having the opportunity to allocate these funds and for the county to potentially make that public investment, that tangible public investment in farmland preservation for these projects that sometimes, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 can be the difference between conserving, 100 acres or 150 acres, projects throughout the county. I believe it would unlock the potential and the opportunity for so many more projects and willing participants in this, or for conservation easements to come forward and to go into these agreements. So, but yeah, to answer your question, no obligation. This is just the process to release funds if the county chooses to designate funding.
Thank you.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, keep going. I got a couple more, and but thank you for these are all great questions, and I appreciate them. As I mentioned, this kind of demonstrates, you see that huge jump, and the correlation is, as y'all have seen around the county, the correlation post-COVID is land coming out of present use value directly correlates with the development that we're seeing. So when you see this big jump from 2000 to 2021. $240,000 in rollback taxes, 157, 272. 2024, that number looks low, but I know that number is still coming in, so I would anticipate it'll be, somewhere probably around 156, 160, so we'll see that number consistently climb. So these are numbers that we anticipate are going to continue to grow. And these are, again, you see this direct correlation between growth and development and land being sold. And it's typically going to be ag land. This slide right here, I know might be kind of hard to see some of the words and percentages, but this illustrates projected farmland loss across North Carolina. North Carolina is the #2 state in the nation in projected farmland loss over the next 20 to 25 years. Texas is #1, we're at #2, and you see Lee County. Right now, we are looking at anywhere from 15 to 30% of farmland, of working land loss by 2040. So this is not a phenomenon that we anticipate, that will slow down here over the next couple decades. So this is something that I've touched on a little bit during our conversation and our questions, so I'm not going to dwell on any of these, but there may be a few that we haven't devoted a lot of attention to. But I think one of the most important things that I think when we're thinking about this potential investment in farmland preservation is the significance of the county committing public funds. I know as we talked about the land use plan, as we talked about what citizens value, what they appreciate about Lee County, how they recognize and love the balance between the urban and the rural, the quality of life we have, the open space, the working lands, small farms, agriculture. All that is what makes Lee County a desirable place to live. And I think an investment like this it would be a landmark investment. It really demonstrates that we value this as a county. We could say we're directly reinvesting funds. When we lose farmland, we can channel these dollars back into existing farms or future farms. I've alluded to before that sometimes the costs that we would potentially be going to for the board, those could be the make or break costs. Those could be the out-of-pocket soft costs that could bring a project home. Many of the grants that Melissa and TLC and other groups work so hard to get, when they do their scorecards, when they look at their grant score sheets, a county support or county funding is critical. Sometimes it's a 5% match. Sometimes there's a $700,000, $800,000 project, and she may come to the county, or a landowner may come to the county needing $20,000 to preserve 200 acres. So, I mean, I see that as an investment and as money well spent. It allows us flexible options. Many of these dollars may cover costs that aren't otherwise covered, and it opens up the opportunity for us to leverage funds that we wouldn't otherwise be able to without the county demonstrating their commitment. And finally, these funds, they could be spread across a number of projects. You know, when we think about the folks that spoke tonight about their various projects, by having these funds available on a consistent basis, we could look at supporting a number of landowners and a number of new, different, and unique projects every cycle. So, I know that was a lot. I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you for your questions. I know this is a lot to digest, so I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, if there are additional questions.
Additional questions, Commissioner Martin.
Thanks for the presentation. You did a good, thorough job on that. You know, one of the interesting things about Lee County is that we have, like you said, we have this survey, you know, these important things that are brought up, what's important to maintain in Lee County, and agriculture is one of them, many other things. And so we seem to have this tension, right, with we want to preserve farmland, but we also want to have, you know, sort of state-of-the-art wonderful things to enjoy, sports parks and libraries, and all of this, you know, all of this affects our tax base is what really is at the base of all of these decisions. I know we have some farmers who are already in conservation agreements. I think it's a great idea to give farmers an opportunity to jump into these conservation agreements or easements. But they aren't, like, they do come at a long-term cost for the county, right? Like 3 generations or 4 generations down the road, we don't know what it's going to look like. And what we do know is that we will never collect you know, let's just say 80% market value of that tax. All that being said, I still think it's important to give farmers the right to choose to put their lands in a conservation easement if they desire to. My question comes with, I mean, I certainly don't want, you know more than I do about this, but I don't want to make the assumption that all farmers cannot afford the costs that are associated that you mentioned, the needs for. But for those that do have that need, has there been any consideration for alternative ways to fund that without just taking the monies that would necessarily go back into our, you know, back into the tax base that we could then use for things like the school or the jail or all the other things that we are required to do? Like, is there a way to support, here's my ultimate question, I'm getting there. Is there a way to support the farmers who want to be in conservation but don't have the ability to pay those upfront costs? You know, could the county maybe look into, you know, some sort of a loan program, let's say, where the farmer's going to get, I'm going to throw out numbers, and I have no idea if these are even somewhat accurate. You said, I mean, let's just say $500,000. Farmer's going to receive $500,000, but it's going to cost, I think I heard $20,000 as an example number thrown around. Could there be similar to how we did with Brick City Capital, right? Like, there's a loan that we're willing to extend for X amount of time until the funds come in, so that, you know, I'm just throwing that around. You know, different ways to fund that without necessarily saying, you know, here's this big pot of money, you know, and just take whatever you know.
Yeah, you know, I'm certainly open to alternative ideas. I mean, I think this is a policy that we presented with, you know, I think the initial thinking was that we were able to demonstrate a direct correlation between these lands and these rollback taxes and development and directly infusing or reinvesting back into agriculture. I mean, there is some precedent in this across the state. I mean, a number of counties have done this at different levels, but you know, I'm not sure. I hesitate to go down the road of the county setting up loans potentially.
I mean, I don't love that either. but
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of alternatives.
Yeah, I know, I understand. And I don't know what the terms would be, if they'd be comparable to a traditional lender. And if that's the case, I'm not even sure that that would be appealing for a landowner to come to the county as opposed to another lender. I think, when a landowner goes into a conservation easement contract, it's a long, I think Melissa, I don't know if she wants to talk on any of this, but I know a lot of the projects she works on take multiple years. So they're very involved. There's a lot of administrative pieces to it. And I'm not sure if adding that additional loan component or expectation would be appealing. But again, I'm certainly not saying that's something that we couldn't look into a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate that it is a long process to get this going. But is that something that we could look into?
Yeah, I talked to Dr. Stone this morning. So I do think that the county could do a loan. I do think that we would have to set some kind of market interest rate. Logistically, this is something we would have to kind of figure out how we would work through, because I do think that we would probably take a deed of trust on the property for that time period, and I don't know what that looks like. I haven't had a chance to, I see shaking heads. So some of that, because I didn't know if it has to have clean title to receive the state and federal funding, and I see head shaking. So we would need to kind of work through some of the logistical pieces of that to see if it's actually feasible.
Okay, that's fair. I'm going to suggest that we do that, because again, just hearing what you're saying and seeing that there might be I'm going to say a need for, some sort of assistance. It would be nice to be able to support that and sort of fill that need, but without it coming from, it's like the tax dollars originated from the rollover differential, but they're nevertheless, they're still tax dollars, right? And so to pull out of this big pool, to pull that money and say, here you go, to a particular citizen, it seems it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, and it's, I think it falls into questionable use of tax dollars. And I know you mentioned that there are counties who are doing that. I think when we talked about Durham, maybe in Wake, or possibly Chatham, all of them fairly large counties with significant, differential pools for tax dollars than Lee County. So thank you, Whitney, for looking into that. That's all.
Mr. Lovett?
I think I'm understanding this statement first, that the monies that we're asking for this program is rollback tax money. We're not trying to look at a line item to put in our tax base to cover things like this. So it's money that's collected from rollback taxes. And as a question, how are those tax dollars come far as back to the county? Say the city is annexing property that's outside the city limits and taking that over. How are part of those dollars going to the city, or all come to the county? It might be a question for Mike, I'm not sure.
That's a good question. I don't know if that would come back to the county, Whitney?
I was thinking, because it's in the county, so they weren't city taxes to begin with, so I think they would come, maybe fire district, Lisa said, but I think it stays in the county, but I don't know. That's
They had to sell the land first before the city can annex it, so.
Right.
So they had to pay those taxes before the city can.
That's a good question. We'll have to look into that.
And the zoning to get these type dollars back, does it have to be zone agriculture? Or, because some of the land's being annexed, may be right there, some of both. Does it have to be zone agriculture?
Yeah.
To get
Well,
the
I think, the way that this policy would be written is, obviously, this would be a county policy. So a lot of what the city would do, I don't think as far as annexation, I don't think it would be able to coexist. I'll defer to Whitney on that.
Yeah. I don't think so, because it's going to be bought and then it's gonna be annexed. You know, like they're gonna buy the, take it
Yeah,
out.
I know how
as a
sometimes
use.
those certain groups come in and line some stuff up to seek the next buyer.
I don't know, I haven't thought through some of that, so, good questions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Connect?
I mean, I think you made some points, but, you know, a lot of annexation, we have no control over. I think we're only one of the 2 counties in the state that allows annexation outside of city limits. And that's where the problems we're getting into now. Big tracts of land being annexed, and then, you know, we have no control over it. People always, they ask me, I'm like, I have no control over it. You know, it's crazy. Now, the other question is, Commissioner Martin asked about a loan program. Is there a state law that decrees the interest rate that we have to use?
Yes, I think as the Constitution requires us, if we're loaning that it has to be, so there's no exclusive emolument, that it has to be at an interest rate, like a market interest rate.
What's that? Yeah, what's that, is that the same as theirs?
I said, I was asking what Brick City Capital's interest rate is.
Yeah, it was like
We
6%.
negotiated that.
Yeah.
6%,
right,
was it?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We had to increase it.
What was the other one we did for Longleaf or something like that? What was that interest rate? No, was it, we used tobacco settlement money for some, what was that program?
We've done a loan to the airport.
What's that?
From that, we've done a loan to the airport authority out of the, you said tobacco settlement, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the other fund. revolving
I'm going
loan
back a
fund.
little further than that. It was tobacco settlement money.
The Golden Leaf?
Golden Leaf, thank you.
That's-
Golden Leaf.
That
was
is
that
the
percentage
revolving
rate?
loan fund we have, and it wasn't, those funds came to us, though, under economic development deal. That's through the funds that are in the Golden Leaf Fund.
It was Frontier Spinning that initiated that first loan.
Who decided, I mean, I remember that interest rate being almost, was that market rate at the time too?
Yes.
It was, thank you.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
Okay, so when the land goes into the TLC, can you explain and I know it takes a couple of years, you said, to get all the stuff. So what happens once it's in the TLC?
So once the land, you're talking about when the agreement is finalized?
Yes, sir.
So when the agreement is finalized, the contract outlines what that land can be used for, what purposes it can be used for. And the landowner really has to project what their land use goals are going to be for this property. There's certain, there's certain parameters where going into a contract, the landowner can say, well, I want to set aside an acre or 2 for a home site, maybe if my kids or grandkids want to build a site there. So all of that is built into the contract, as well as the allowable uses of that land. Once the contract is finalized with the Triangle Land Conservancy and everything is closed, then they are the easement holder. At that point, the county really has no responsibility for that easement. The Land Conservancy will do all of the monitoring. I think there's at least annual monitoring. Is that right? Annual monitoring done by the TLC. So they ensure that contract is fulfilled at that point, so that the county really, after the county allocates or releases those funds, their role, I guess, in the project is basically done.
Great, and will you explain the release of the funds, what that looks like?
Sure. We outline that a little bit more in the policy, but what that would look like is initially, if a project were to come to us and we were to, let's say they put the landowner into contact with TLC. TLC has a score sheet that they use for each project, because they don't accept every project that comes to them. It has to meet their criteria. If it is a project that they feel like they want to take on, and it's a project that they see the potential need for county funding, if we do have county funding available, that would work, in conjunction with other funds, other grant funds that they put together, they would then bring that project to our county advisory board, some of the members here that you've heard from tonight. The county advisory board would be the initial vetting group for that project. They would hear from a representative from Triangle Land Conservancy and/or the landowner. If that board felt comfortable that this was a project that was worthy of funding, that they would push on down the line, then that project would come to the Board of Commissioners. And with that request would come how those dollars would be used. You could see like a line item on total costs, how everything would be requested and paid out. And there would be a stipulation of like not to exceed. So, this request will not exceed $25,000. And then the county would vote yes or no to I guess, release or allocate those funds. And upon completion of the project, at closing, those funds would then, those agreed upon funds not to exceed, would be released by the county to wrap up this project, the close, or at final closing.
Okay. And then the owner of the property once then gets paid for releasing their rights going into the conservancy, correct?
That's correct. So when land, or, when they're looking at particular projects, they have a formula. And Melissa, do you want to come and talk on? Melissa is a representative of Triangle Land Conservancy. She does this every day, so she can talk to you from a boots on the ground perspective. So I'll let her talk about what that process will look like.
Yeah, as far as establishing the value of the easement, we get an appraisal, and they do a before and after value, and so they would value the property at its highest and best use based on the market, which is more often than not for farms going to be residential development, depending on, water and sewer and zoning and all of those factors. Full appraisal report, and then they have the hypothetical condition of the conservation easement, and we'll send them a draft template of what the restrictions are, and then they'll place the value after the easement would be on the property. The difference between those is how we establish the value of the easement.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, thank you. A scenario, so land gets put into the TLC, and then there's restrictions based on what the TLC does. And that landowner passes, and there's no one left to will it to. What happens then?
So the easement is forever, and it runs with the property, even if they pass away and it
But
goes
who
to an
guaran-
estate sale.
Yeah, so I guess here's my scenario is if, and I'm not picking on you guys, so Christmas Tree Farm goes into the TLC. There's no one left, say 25 years later, to run it. Who guarantees it continues being a Christmas Tree Farm?
So TLC will still continue to do the annual monitoring, no matter who the landowner is. So we would come out once a year and make sure that the restrictions in the easement are being followed. It doesn't have to stay in the farm use that it was in when the easement was placed, but the restrictions would be like, they can't subdivide it. They can't make a Walmart parking lot.
So does someone come in and buy it? I guess this is where I'm
Yeah,
getting
someone could
confused.
come in and buy it. If it goes to like an estate sale or a, what am I trying to say? Like if it basically has to get settled in court, the easement is still on it, and it could go to auction or however those proceedings would normally go. But TLC will still,
You guys are the ones that will end up selling it to somebody.
we do not own the property, so we wouldn't sell it. It would just go into however, like normally if someone passes away, they don't have heirs. The easement remains on the property, and whoever buys it, we would connect with them and talk to them about, these are the restrictions, and we would still continue to come out once a year and check on it.
Check to make sure that it was still
That they're
being,
following.
whatever it is. And
Yep.
if they don't, what happens?
There's legal recourse. We have a stewardship endowment fund that's associated with properties where we basically can take a landowner to court if we have to, but the first step is always a conversation with the landowner. I mean, we have an ongoing relationship with them, and we ask that if they do sell the property or pass it on, that they, let us know and help, get us connected with the new owner, if that is possible. If a landowner refuses, we do not see this very often, but if a landowner was blatantly disregarding the easement, they were paved a road and, tried to subdivide or whatever crazy scenario, we have funding that we can use to pursue that in court. But it's almost always a quick conversation with the landowner, and more often than not, the issues come from neighboring properties that are encroaching.
Okay, and forgive me for my ignorance. So say it goes into, there's no one left to will the property to, and you sell it on, what'd you say, on the estate?
I guess.
Where does the money, it just sits in limbo?
TLC is not involved in the ownership of the property at all. So when properties are settled, like in the county court system, the money goes to the county. I don't even know, actually. We just own the easement, yeah. So we would just get, once the property is transferred to the new owner, based on, the court settlement, we would just connect with the new owner and keep on doing the annual monitoring and make sure they understand what they've purchased.
Okay. Okay, so then my other question, and you might not be able to, this kind of goes back to the present use value funds. If, say, those funds would run out, what would happen? Like, say it would pass tonight, and that funds were not enough to cover whatever was moving forward.
I mean, I think the present, or the projects that the board would be willing to approve, you just have to use discretion. I mean, if the funds were limited, then when projects came to the board, we just have to vet them.
What you're saying is the property, so what's the average cost to the property owner to go through this particular procedure? There's got to be an average. There's got to be a high, there's got to be a low.
I'll let Melissa describe it, because I know, listening to her stories about the project she's worked on, everyone can be very, very different in the cost, the easement size, and what the needs might be for some of the transactional or closing costs.
Yeah, I mean, it really varies. I would say the biggest variable is always the survey, because and like legal attorney fees. So if you have a project that is really, really massive, it's gonna take a lot of time to survey, that survey is gonna be a lot more expensive.
Let's do 100 acres.
Oh, gosh, maybe like 3,000 for an appraisal, 15 to 20 for a survey, depending on a couple different things. I mean, it could be, transaction costs could be anywhere from like 30,000 to 60,000, depending on the size and complexity of the project. Is that helpful?
So wasn't that just come out of the cost that you end up paying for the land?
Sorry?
Can you just say, hey, that can come out of the cost of what we're going to give you for the land?
Yeah, that's what we have to do right now. But, especially for farmers, that can be significant. I mean, they're giving up essentially the ability to be able to sell their property in the future, or for their children to be able to sell it for a massive
You can always
payout.
sell it as a farm, though. You can always resell it as a farm.
Yes, they're giving up the ability to sell it for a lot more money. And usually there's a component of bargain sale involved in the purchase of the easement. And to answer one of your previous questions about the present use value, if there's a 25% donated value of the easement, so basically they receive 75% of what the easement is worth, they qualify for permanent present use value even if they stop farming. So they're not required to continue farming, but more often than not, the landowners we work with are protecting their land and giving up their development rights because they want to continue farming and they want their children to farm.
And did I understand you correctly to say that there isn't a situation where, well, let me rephrase that. Did I understand you correctly? Did I hear you say that the farmer does presently have the option to enter into the agreement and have those funds taken out of the full cost that, let's say they're going to get $500,000 for the land and it's going to cost, I think, $30,000 to do all the fees, that as is right now without any funding, it is very possible, and there are farmers who are already doing that, they're entering into the agreement, and maybe maybe you're paying for those fees and then it comes off at the end of that lump sum. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so that is our only option right now in Lee County, as opposed to the other 5 counties that we work in. So right now, they would have to cover those costs. TLC doesn't have a source, but going forward, especially now, so the funding that's usually provided for the conservation easement purchase and for a portion of the transaction cost is coming from a competitive state grant by the Agricultural Development Farmland Preservation Trust Fund. It's kind of a mouthful.
Okay.
And they have a competitive cycle every year that we can apply for projects. Last year, there were 100 applications and they funded 20. And going forward, they are placing extra emphasis on projects that have secured local funding. And so it's really hugely impactful on the ability to even get any funding at all for these projects, even to have a small portion of secured local match funding.
How much is that? I mean, local match, what are we matching?
You're matching the state funds. So if we applied for a project and we were applying for $1 million and the county was putting in $100,000, there would be points associated with the county's contribution on the application. And it makes it more competitive. Basically, the state wants to see that counties are invested in protecting agriculture when they're funding
Is there a
projects.
percentage they're looking for?
Nope, it's a point scale, so every percentage point of the budget that the local funds are providing is counted as 2 points for the score. I can talk to you more about that another time, but this is all what TLC does, a lot of grant math, and it's pretty complicated, but basically the gist of it is that although, yes, we can complete these projects, it is very impactful for the farmers to be able to receive as much as they can through doing a conservation easement, because they are already giving up a lot by selling those development rights, oftentimes already at a bargain sale, and this is making it much more competitive across the state, which is becoming more and more difficult in the Triangle specifically because of rising land values.
I understand that. I didn't realize that there was funding available for the farmers to, so that was kind of my thought, you know, for this loan idea that we just threw out. It sounds like that's not even needed because there is funding presently for that. It's that we're asking for the farmer to not have to pay those fees, is what you're really
That's
ultimately
correct.
asking for.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
I think my only other question was, and you kind of touched on it, well, I actually have two. One, I don't know if you can answer tonight, but you had mentioned something about if there's something about 75% that they can continue staying in a PUV even without farming. Can you explain that?
Yeah, if they donate, I think it's a state statute, if they donate 25% of the value, they are exempt from the production requirement.
Who's they?
The
Sorry.
farmer.
Okay, so it goes into the TLC, say they get $500,000. They donate 25%?
Yeah,
Is
so
that
if,
what you're saying,
if the
of the
easement
sale?
was, if the easement was worth
Yeah.
$100,000 and we paid the landowner $75,000, then they can qualify for permanent present use value.
Regardless if they farm or not.
Yes, but they still have to follow the easement, so it still remains in, it still can't be subdivided, all those restrictions are
Yeah.
still in place.
Okay, and then my other question is, I understand why if a county puts in stake to it, the land looks more good on paper. Is it a 100% match, or if we looked into 50% match or something along those lines, or looked into other avenues, does that still help?
Yeah, every little bit helps. So, I mean, it could be 5% and it would still give, so basically, not to go too in the weeds with grant scoring, but for the state applications, if Lee County put in 5% for an easement, they would get 5 points on their application. But now, if they put in 5% for an easement, they get 10 points on their application. So counties that have secured funding for agriculture preservation are getting a leg up, essentially, for completing projects. Does that answer your question?
It does, it does. I appreciate it, thank you.
Commissioner Sharp?
My questions are back for, I only have one question, a couple of statements, but as I said earlier, I support the program, and I see the value in the program. You know, some people up here say they, want to slow residential development, and a lot of people out in the county and in the city as well want to slow residential development. Would you say that we're missing out on a good chance to slow that development and at the same time conserve farmland?
I think you know, a program like conservation easement is an extremely useful tool to preserve farmland. You know, when we think about land use planning, when we think about that land use plan in place, let's just consider if there's, you know, multiple conservation easements throughout the county of a couple hundred acres, and we know that land will never be developed. You know, think about what that could mean for how we recognize that land, how that land is zoned, how we drive development. You know, as we talked about before, and I think this relates to your question and your comment, is this really is all about thinking about how we want to grow as a county, where we want to grow, and what we want that growth to look like. You know, agriculture and folks in our field, no pun intended, in our world, we're not anti-growth. We just really encourage our economic developers and the folks that we collaborate with to think about where it makes sense to grow. And I think programs like this lend to that. It's another extremely valuable tool, along with present use value, along with, you know, following the recommendations of the land use plan. Urban sprawl is one of the biggest consumers of land in our community. And so yes, I know that was kind of a long answer, but I do think these projects, I see them as an investment. I see a commitment like this as an investment toward where we see the future of this county and what the citizens would like to see. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that was yes without you saying yes, but that's good. It's a good answer.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because this was brought up, just to have clarity, if I have a 1 acre farm, at the present time, I'm still paying my normal property tax. If I go into your new district, your E, right? I can go into that, but I'm still paying my regular property tax that I'm paying now. Because you're still keeping in place the
Yes.
normal breakdown.
Yes.
So that doesn't change a necessary for property tax increment at all.
That's correct.
Thank you.
The VAD ordinance, the EVAD that we're proposing absolutely has no effect on present use value taxes. It's the tax department,
Mike's
Michael.
behind
Oh,
you.
there he is behind me. I don't want him to come up and kick me in the leg, yeah. No, it will not affect until PUV only will kick in at that 5 acre minimum.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that we've had a thorough discussion on that, we're going to hold off on any action on this, so please take it back, mull over it, and go through it. Now, Chairman's prerogative is, we're going to take a break, 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Baby, lock the door and turn the lights down low. Put some music on that's soft and slow. Baby, we ain't got no place to go. I hope you understand. I've been thinking about this all day long. Never felt a feeling quite this strong. I can't believe how much it turns me on just to be your man. There's no hurry, don't you worry. We can take our time. Come a little closer, let's go over what I had in mind. Baby, lock the door and turn the lights down low. Put some music on that's soft and slow. Baby, we ain't got no place to go. I hope you understand. I've I've been thinking about this all day long. Never felt a feeling quite this strong. I can't believe how much it turns me on just to be your man. Ain't nobody ever loved nobody the way that I love you. We're alone now, you don't know how long I've wanted to lock the door and turn the lights down low. Put some music on that's soft and slow. Baby, we ain't got no place to go. I hope you understand. I've been thinking about this all day long. Never felt a feeling that was quite this strong. I can't believe how much it turns me on just to be your man. I can't believe how much it turns me on just to be your man. I run from hate. I run from prejudice. I run from pessimists. But I run too late.
I run my life, or is it running me? Run from my past. I run too fast, or too slow it seems. When lies become the truth, that's when I run to you. This world keeps spinning faster into a new disaster, so I run to you, I run to you, baby. When it all starts coming undone, baby, you're the only one I run to. I run to you.
We run on fumes. Your life and mine, like the sands of time, slipping right on through. Our love's the only truth. That's why I run to you. This world keeps spinning faster into a new disaster, so I run to you, I run to you, baby. When it all starts coming undone, baby, you're the only one I run to. I run to you. Oh,
Oh, I run to you. This world keeps spinning faster into a new disaster, so I run to you.
wanna drink that shot of whiskey. I wanna smoke that cigarette. I wanna smell that sweet addiction on my breath. I wanna ride across West Virginia in the backseat of a Cadillac. You know some cowboys like me go out like that. So I need you, like Anita needs a vein, like my Uncle Joe in Oklahoma needs a rain. And I need you, like a lighthouse on the coast, like the Father and the Son need the Holy Ghost. I need you.
I wanna get lost in some corner booth, Cantina, Mexico. I wanna dance to the static of an AM radio. I wanna wrap the moon around us, lay beside you skin on skin. Make love till the sun comes up, till the sun goes down again. 'Cause I need you, like Anita needs a vein, like my Uncle Joe in Oklahoma needs a rain. I need you, like a lighthouse on the coast, like the Father and the
We have less than a minute to resume. If you would please return.
I wanna drink that shot of whiskey. I wanna smoke that cigarette. You know some cowboys like me go out like that. Is it cold here? Sorry.
Wendy doing the same thing today, and I was like, oh, woman. I went to kiss her before I left, and she was... Okay, our 10 minutes is up. If we can please resume. Somewhere I have commissioners there, they work here. Well, they all disappeared. Next item on the agenda is the E-rate letter, and I'm going to have Beth List is going to brief us and go forward.
Do you want me to go ahead?
A letter of agency.
They're in the room. Don't worry. All right. Good evening, Commissioners and County Admin. IT Director Kyle Edwards and I have been discussing E-rate for a few years for the libraries. With the new library building on the horizon, we determined that it would be most beneficial to explore E-rate again and see what we could work out. We were fortunate to have Cindy Johnson willing to assist us in this endeavor. Ms. Johnson is a former Lee County Schools Technology Director, now retired and running E-rate services for libraries and schools in North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, and more. She is the guru of all things E-rate and is willing to take us on as a client at more than half the cost, or more than less than half the cost she would normally charge. The cost for her efforts will be determined down the road, as they are directly related to the percentage of E-rate funding successfully obtained for our libraries. This amount will be minimal, about 2%, compared to the grand total of what E-rate will actually save us with the new library. The request you have before you is a letter of agency needed in order to move forward and stay within the E-rate deadlines to apply for the funding, put out the RFPs, etc. Cindy Johnson is actually here with us tonight, thankfully, so she can explain this all to you and answer any questions that you have about the program.
Thank you.
Would you like for me to explain E-rate, or would you
Yes,
like to
ma'am,
just ask
please,
questions?
please.
E-rate's a federal reimbursement program that provides funds for technology infrastructure and connectivity for schools and public libraries. Over the years, Kyle Edwards and I have discussed whether or not it would be beneficial for the county to participate in the program. And in spite of having a consultant, there's still a lot of things that the county would have to do. It will take a lot of time. In the past, it has not seemed worth the time for the money that you would be getting back. But with the new library coming in, it could help with fiber installation and also the cost of your switches and access points, UPSs, that would be going in. So, as I mentioned, Kyle and I have talked through the years, and I had offered to do this at no charge for the school system. There is a packet for each of you. There is just a printed PowerPoint that explains what E-rate is in more detail, and also what that could mean for the county. And then you have my scope of work. My team would do what we would do for any paying client. Basically, we will not tell you what you need, and we will not tell you who you want to do it. We do everything else. So we try to take as much work off of you as we can while ensuring that you get some federal dollars. And then you have a list of our clients. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Any questions for me?
Questions for Mrs. Johnson? Commissioner Martin?
Did I understand you correctly to say that you have been working with Lee County Schools, but just not you've been offering your service at no cost?
I had been their technology officer for 17 years and was doing consulting for E-rate as part of that job. Doing their E-rate applications, but doing consulting on the side. And then the feds made this program simpler, which meant people needed consultants more than ever about the time that my elderly parents needed more help. So I left a job that I loved. Nobody in their right mind really likes working with federal programs. So it was a good family decision, but I felt like it could benefit the county. So I have been working with Lee County Schools for many years. I have done their work for the last 28 years. But I work with other libraries and schools as well.
And I see it says a potential savings of $195,000. And you may not have seen the summary, but the summary says, however, applying for E-rate can save the county hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm just kind of I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this savings.
Before we can apply for funds, anything that the technology department needs for the library will have to go out for bid, and we won't know until those bids come in how much money you could actually save.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Lovick?
No questions. Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Commissioner Connect? Commissioner Vorbeck?
You actually answered one of the questions I had was just, when I saw that it said you could work with school systems and the counties, I was worried we weren't also including our school system in the request, but you're already including our school system in the request.
It would have to be done as separate applications. That's just a list of the clients I work with.
Okay, perfect. Other than that, that was really kind of just, I wanted to make sure that if we were looking at something that could also benefit them, to make sure that we were including them. So that's it.
Commissioner Sharp?
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much. The request for the Board of Commissioners to authorize the county manager to sign a letter of agency with the local E-rate services company and authorize the agent to file any and all documents on behalf of Lee County E-rate services. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Motion's been the motion's made to approve, and authorize the county manager to sign letter of agency and authorize the agents to file any and all documents on behalf of Lee County for E-rate services. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Chairman Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
Kyle Edwards has also requested that due to the timeline of the E-rate process, our RFPs have to be out for no less than 28 days, and they cannot be released until after tonight. So he is asking, there will not be enough time before the due date of this on March 26th for those who, if any of the contracts or RFPs come back in and result in contracts in excess of $50,000, for us to bring them back to the board. So he wanted me to ask the board to authorize the chair to sign any E-rate related contracts in excess of $50,000.
So we need to make that a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion's been made to
Can I just
approve.
ask one question, just to make sure I'm following? The 50,000 would be, or the potentially over 50,000 is the amount of the potential cost to put it in.
Right.
To install or whatever it needs to, right? Not the part of what the county would be responsible for, not like the 10, 15% that was on the thing, correct?
It's okay, so like she said, we have to get the equipment and everything back as RFPs. So that's what we'll be buying, and then they'll turn around and figure out what we can get back in the E-rate.
Got it.
So there'll be a
Okay.
net eventually.
Okay, all right, thank
So
you.
if anything above 50,000 allows the chairman to sign. That's the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Monthly financial reports.
Who made the motion?
Mark.
Oh, so sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask one quick question before she comes up? Is
Quick
that allowed?
question
Okay.
regarding?
Stop. So with the funds for the equipment were already put in the library budget to begin with? Like, this is not a, correct, it's not a new entity, we weren't, okay, I thought so. Just want to make sure.
We're just trying to stretch our dollars.
I appreciate it, thank you. Sorry, Candace.
Okay.
Good evening. The January 2025 monthly financial report was included in your agenda for your review. The ad valorem tax collections are at 96.21% of our adopted budget. The target for expenditures at the end of January is 58.33%. There are several departments over this target due to the inclusion of encumbrances. However, if those encumbrances are removed, the departments that remain over the target are elections, IT, and the sheriff's departments. This is due to costs associated with unforeseen additional elections expenses, annual agreements for IT, and vehicle maintenance, replacement, life safety, capital outlay purchases, as well as law enforcement-related annual agreements for the sheriff's office. The November 2024 sales tax distribution report is also attached for your review. As a reminder, these reports do run 3 months behind. We are 3.83% ahead of sales tax collections for the same period last fiscal year.
Questions for Candace? Commissioner Sharp? Commissioner Vorbeck?
Yes, I have 12. No, I don't have any.
Commissioner Connect? Commissioner Lovick?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
None, thank you.
Okay, moving on. County Manager's Monthly Report. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I will try to read this quickly but understandably. Lee County Athletic Park, field construction, the installation of the synthetic turf on fields 5 and 6 is complete. The field builder, Precision Turf, is now focusing on fields 9 and 10 for fine grading and drainage installation. Fencing and field borders, including backstops, batting cages, and dugouts, are currently being installed. As far as site construction goes, concrete installation has begun around the diamond fields and Field House A. The installation of street and walkway lights are in progress, along with pouring concrete sidewalks throughout the site. Playground delivery is anticipated to occur at the end of February 2025. The water system has been tested and approved by Tri-River Water. The total cost of the meter sets for for 5 meters and system development fees for the water and sewer service to support the entire park is $63,320.57. A change order for $10,245.49 was approved and included additional markings or tick marks for efficiency and program lining preparation on the synthetic turf fields to allow for multiple sporting setups by Parks and Recreation, as well as monument sign changes. The changes to the monument sign include the added tagline, "Sporting legacies, lasting memories, and building brick by brick," brick by brick, and in removable panels for social media addresses. Phase 1 and Phase 2 park projects, O.T. Sloan Park Accessibility Project. This project includes the installation of sidewalk, a concrete seat wall, ribbon curb, parking improvements, and construction of a playground with a pad surface. The general contractor is Stanford Contractors, and the playground contractor is Bar Recreation. Construction continues with grading completed and the concrete for border and sidewalk poured. Bar Recreation is currently on-site installing playground equipment. The library building project, construction continues with stormwater management installation and grading work to finalize the foundation pad along with underground plumbing and electrical installation. Staff is working with Vines Architecture and coordinating plans for furniture, fixtures, and equipment to finalize selections. The historic courthouse renovation project includes roof replacement with alternates for masonry and brownstone repairs. Harrod and Associate Constructors were awarded the bid. A pre-construction meeting was held on site on January 27, 2025. Staff is working on coordinating the project and start date and construction schedule with the contractor, architect, and North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office based on the impacts and uncertainties created by recent federal funding developments. Horton Park parking lot improvements. Duke Energy has removed an existing light pole in the construction area that will be relocated after the parking lot is constructed. The contractors performed final surveys on site to support earthwork, and weather has impacted the start of construction, but the plan continues to have work completed before the pool opens in May 2025. And we recently issued the notice of that park being closed while this work's being done. Lee County Jail waste pipe replacement. The existing waste pipe and cell pods C and D at the Lane County Detention Center are in immediate need of replacement to mitigate ongoing plumbing ruptures due to the condition of the pipe. The project includes removal and replacement of existing cast iron waste sewer and vent piping within cell pod C and D and the common utility Chase. The project was bid on January 24th and was awarded to Hair Plumbing, Inc. A project construction meeting was held on site on February 6th to discuss the project work plan and schedule. The Sheriff's Office has initiated the process to relocate inmates from cell pod D, and work can begin on this cell block once the cell block is cleared. The goal is to start work on March 10th if all inmates can be relocated as planned. The contract allows for 195 days to complete the reported project work. You have various reports from the different departments you see listed there in your agenda. Upcoming meetings, we have this Friday. Please remember that we have our legislative breakfast at Sand Lane Nature Center at 9 a.m. On March 3rd and 17th, we have our regular board meetings. Both meetings in March will be at the McSwain Center. On March 19th, we are also working on planning a joint board meeting with the Board of Education. We'll let you know the time, but again, that will be at McSwain on March 19th. April 7th and 21st are regular board meetings. And I also have one additional item. I'd like to recognize our Recreation Department. Lee County Parks and Recreation was recognized at the recent Recreation Resources Directors Conference in Winston-Salem last week. We were presented with a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund sign to display at our Kiwanis Children's Park to educate the public about the grant funding to complete Kiwanis Children's Park. It was noted in the recognition that Lee County completed the grant project on time and exceeded expectation. This project consisted of a new shelter, bathroom renovations, sidewalk connectivity, and nature playground with $209,000 in grant funding. Lee County Parks and Recreation plans to apply for future Parks and Recreation Trust Fund funding on parks projects in the future to meet the needs of our Lee County citizens. That's it.
Questions for the manager? Commissioner Martin?
Thank you.
Commissioner Lovick?
None, thank you.
Commissioner Connect?
Thank you.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
No, sir.
Commissioner Sharp?
None, thank you.
I do have a question.
Okay.
What's it going to cost to move all those inmates?
We don't have the final cost yet. They are working with the county that right now thinks they can take all of our inmates at one place. But you're probably looking anywhere from I'm going to tell you probably around $100 a day
$100
per
a day?
inmate.
Per inmate, okay. Thank you. It is now time for commissioners' comments. We'll start with Commissioner Sharp.
Get your snow boots ready, I think it's coming Wednesday. Just get ready. Be careful.
That's it?
That's all.
Okay.
That is all.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
Just want to thank everyone that came out tonight, and Dr. Stone's information on the TLC. The family and I got a chance to go out to White Pines Nature Preserve, which happens to be in Chatham County's TLC. So giant signs, and I knew what they were talking about, but hopefully there's something we can talk to and put our minds together and be able to help out in a way that makes it most feasible. And looking forward to Friday's lunch. Breakfast, not
Nature Park.
Nature Park.
Commissioner Connect.
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Lovick.
Congratulations, first of all, to the Recreation Department on the award. That's good. Thank you for the crowd. Well, most have left, but thanks for the crowd coming out tonight and the good public comments. And I was hoping to say this in front of the crowd, but thank you, commissioners, for showing your interest in topics. We just didn't rubber stamp something and send it on. So I'm hoping our citizens see how concerned we are about tax dollars and asking good questions. So thank you.
Commissioner Martin.
Yeah, I also am looking forward to Friday, but agreeing with Mark, I would like those in attendance know that we do appreciate the public comments and love to see citizen involvement. Yeah, I learned a lot listening to that presentation from Dr. Stone, specifically in the questions that we all asked. And, you know, no matter what happens, I'm delighted that there's funding either way for that program through TLC. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And just a reminder, today is President's Day, honoring presidents of the past. The Central Pines Rural Planning Organization, we met last week in Chatham County. And just so you know, Kelly Drive, we had a resolution that we passed and presented with a petition to get the speed limit reduced. They've agreed the State Department of Transportation will be reducing the speed limit on Kelly Drive to 45 miles per hour. And those yellow signs that say 45 for the curve, those will come down once that 45 mile per hour sign goes up there. So just a word of warning to the community college crowd and the high school drivers and everybody else racing down that road in front of the Stevens Center. Just be aware the speed limit's coming down. And I do want to say thank you to our DOT board member, Lisa Mathis, for helping with that project. Broadway Road, or the North Carolina 42 project, is 35% complete, so all of you driving up and down that road, just be aware, 35% of it's complete on that project. And then, of course, we already mentioned the legislative breakfast on Friday. We will have Congressman Knott attending, and then after that, we will be visiting the jail. So, any further questions? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion's been made to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're now adjourned. Thank you. Drive safely, wear your seatbelts, and no speeding.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well,